So, Chip and Joanna Gaines, beloved stars of HGTV's Fixer Upper and outspoken Christians, are being canceled by Christians for the dumbest reason. Because if there's one thing you can count on from critics of cancel culture, it's that they will inevitably cancel someone over culture. Stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor, and on this channel, we talk about life and relationships after leaving the church and do some commentary on the goings on in evangelical Christianity. She's back! So, a funny story about my septum ring. So, you guys know that I used to have a septum ring I was in the process of stretching it. And about 2 years ago, I had to take it out. I was kind of struggling with some things at that time, and it was just something that I just didn't wanna have to keep up with it. So that was, like, almost 2 years ago, and I had figured that, in the span of 2 years, that the hole had probably completely closed up, so I went to get it re-pierced the other day, and turns out the hole was still there, so I just had to buy new jewelry for it, and that was it, and I decided to go with this kind of you can't really see it on camera, but it's kind of like a jeweled ring. I think it's pretty. Also, I just got a new haircut. It's technically like a shaggy mullet. I don't know if you can really tell super well on camera, but yeah, I am obsessed with it. So, for the last like 10 years of my life, I've lived in either Fort Worth or Austin, Texas. And what's smack dab between Fort Worth and Austin? Waco, Texas. As you guys probably know, Waco is arguably most well known for once being the home of an extremist cult called the Branch Davidians. In 1993, federal agents led a 51-day siege of the Branch Davidian compound, resulting in the deaths of multiple federal agents, dozens of Branch Davidians, and the total destruction of their compound in a raging fire. This cemented the Branch Davidians as one of the most notorious modern cults, on par with the People's Temple and Heaven's Gate. Today, Waco is actually still home to a few cults, though their members would likely disagree with that label. Just north of Waco, in the small town of Elmont, there is a fundamentalist Christian homesteading community called Homestead Heritage. Recently, this community came under fire after numerous former members claimed that it's actually a dangerous cult. Today's video isn't about Homestead Heritage, but I do plan to discuss it in a future video because I've actually been to that cult, like, multiple times. We used to go to Homestead Heritage almost every fall for their, like, annual homestead fair. Yeah. But there's another so-called cult in Waco that I've also visited multiple times, and that's Magnolia Market. If you've never been, Magnolia is a downtown Waco shopping complex owned by Chip and Joanna Gaines. It's become something of an iconic landmark in Waco. Its main retail shop is located in this old grain mill, and then there's these two giant silos that like loom over the entire grounds. Since its founding in 2015, Magnolia has undergone significant expansion. The grounds now feature numerous shops, eateries, a bakery that every time I've been there has lines wrapping around the block, and a restored 19th century church that Chip and Joanna actually relocated from its original spot elsewhere downtown to Magnolia. If you've been to the Pearl in San Antonio, Magnolia is kind of like that, but a lot more Jesus-y. So, am I seriously suggesting that this shopping center is a cult? Well, no, I'm being a bit silly by calling Magnolia a cult. No charismatic leader is prophesying the end times or forcing people to drink Kool-Aid there. Magnolia is cult-like in a somewhat similar way to Rocky Horror Picture Show. They're both super popular and have very passionate and dedicated fans. It's just that Magnolia's fan base is primarily comprised of white evangelical Christians instead of queer goths. This isn't to say Magnolia is entirely unproblematic either. If you've ever been to Magnolia, you'll know who that place is made for. Straight white, upper middle class evangelicals. My tatted and recently mulleted self would definitely stick out there like a sore thumb. And as my husband has pointed out every time we've been there, Magnolia mostly sells overpriced garbage that they pass off as reclaimed goods. Chip and Joanna's biggest crime is probably that they are capitalists who've figured out how to hawk ridiculously expensive and rather bland home decor to white suburban women. Magnolia's popularity among evangelical Christians has made it a sort of pilgrimage site. Some Christians even vacation in Waco specifically for Magnolia, or at least they did. Now that Chip and Joanna are supposedly canceled, that might all change. Since the beginning of their public careers, the Gaineses have been very open about their Christian faith. Both Chip and Joanna grew up in what they describe as conservative Christian homes. In a 2021 interview with Oprah, Joanna told the media mogul that she has heard God speaking to her throughout her life. She said, "I will say there have probably been 5 pivotal moments in my life where I can say that that was God's voice. That was him. And I felt a sense of peace, almost like that moment where you get chills and you know there's something else." I've got to say, I've also had moments where I felt a similar sense of peace and got chills and truly believe that there's something magical about the world. I actually experienced this somewhat recently, and I have the sponsor of today's video, Womanizer, to thank for that. You guys know that Womanizer is one of my go-to brands, and what makes Womanizer stand out from the competition is that they're the original inventors of suction toys. And as pioneers of this type of toy, they have the experience and knowledge to craft really high quality and reliable products. They offer a wide range of toys at all price points, all featuring their patented Pleasure Air technology. Pleasure Air uses airwaves that gently massage and suction, which gives the user a truly unique and tailored experience. I recently received their flagship toy, the Womanizer Next, and it has quickly become one of my absolute favorite toys because it actually features their improved Pleasure Air technology called Pleasure Air 3D. It features 3 different pulse depth levels and 14 distinct intensity levels, making this toy truly versatile for all body types and moods. It also has an autopilot feature that varies intensity levels for you, so you don't have to manually press buttons when you're just trying to relax and enjoy yourself. One of my absolute favorite features of this toy is that it has a smart silence feature that turns the toy on only when it's in contact with the skin, which is so helpful if you're trying to be quiet and discreet. And it also has an afterglow button that turns the toy back to its lowest intensity level, which, if you know, you know. So I'm so excited to announce that Womanizer and I have actually teamed up to spoil all of you. All you have to do is click the link down in the description to receive a special gift from us. There are no losers here. Everyone will receive a surprise. It could be a free toy, a discount voucher valid on the entire Womanizer website, or even the flagship Womanizer Next. So be sure to click the link down in the description if you want to hear God's voice just like Joanna Gaines. All right, thank you so much, Womanizer. Now let's get back to discussing why Christians are turning on Chip and Joanna Gaines. Okay, so why are Chip and Joanna allegedly canceled? In addition to Magnolia, Chip and Joanna are best known for their time on the home renovation show Fixer Upper. The series was a major hit when it first aired and became one of the most watched cable TV shows of the late 2010s. It even spawned several spin-off shows like Fixer Upper The Castle and Fixer Upper The Hotel. Recently, however, the Gaineses have embarked on another television venture, a reality show on HBO Max called Back to the Frontier. In the show, American families give up modern conveniences and attempt to live like frontiersmen in the 1880s. In my opinion, Chip and Joanna are doing what they do best and capitalizing on our predominantly Christian culture's recent fascination with traditional living and homesteading. You'd think that given the show's premise, this would be right up most evangelicals' alley, right? What problem could they possibly have with it? Well, one of the families starring in the show has 2 dads. Yeah, Chip and Joanna featured a gay couple on their show that romanticizes colonizers. One of the first people to really put Chip and Joanna on blast was the evangelist Franklin Graham, son of the late Billy Graham and president of Samaritan's Purse. Over a week ago, Franklin posted on X and said, "I hope this isn't true, but I read today that Chip and Joanna Gaines are featuring a gay couple on their new series. If it is true, it's very disappointing. While we are to love people, we should love them enough to tell them the truth about God's word. His word is absolute truth. God loves us, and his design for marriage is between one man and one woman. Promoting something that God defines as sin is in itself a sin." Ugh, Frankie, go back to picking out your urn. The world would be better off without your homophobic rants on social media. Franklin's rant did make me wonder, does merely including a gay couple on a show mean that you're promoting the LGBTQ plus community? I'm sure that people like Franklin would argue that it normalizes the gay lifestyle, but following that logic, if they had instead featured someone who'd previously been divorced on the show, would that also mean that they're promoting divorce? As Hemant Mehta of the Friendly Atheist pointed out, these same people have yet to weigh in on Donald Trump's super biblical third marriage to the wife of his fifth kid. Yeah, I agree. They're always oddly silent when it comes to Donald Trump. The truth is, Chip and Joanna haven't actually done anything real to promote or help the LGBT community. I think that having a gay couple on their show just serves to give the viewers this illusion of diversity and increase their ratings. Have they ever donated to an LGBT charity? Do they employ openly queer individuals at their companies? Do they display pride flags at their stores and restaurants during Pride Month? To the best of my knowledge, the answer to these questions is a resounding no. It's telling that the only instances of LGBT inclusion seem to financially benefit Chip and Joanna. Like, they're fine having gay people around, but only when they can make money off of them. Back to the Frontier is also not a religious show. It's on HBO Max, not PureFlix. Chip and Joanna weren't beholden to a conservative Christian moral system when shooting for this show. That being said, I do think that the show is capitalizing on a growing trend within evangelicalism to romanticize the past. As writers for Vulture described, the show is less of a survival game show where actual risks are involved and more like a modern homesteader YouTube content house or an Airbnb investment for trad wives. They also describe it as a photo shoot series of Christian historical fiction novels, and that the producers were more invested in capturing lots of footage of people walking through beautiful fields, silhouetted against the horizon with a slightly desaturated color palette and an aesthetically pleasing out of focus tree in the background. I do have to say, I actually watched one episode of Back to the Frontier. I think there's only 2 episodes out right now. And it's like the entire thing could have almost been an ad for Magnolia. So every family has their own cabin, right, that they're living in, and everything in the cabin, from the silverware to, you know, the cutting board that they have, and like the furniture and linens and blankets, and even kind of the fabrics that they're wearing, they could all be things that would totally be sold at Magnolia. And in the episode that I was watching, they gave each family like $30, and that was the money that they had to budget for, I think, the entirety of the show. And they have this general store that I think is, you know, equidistant between all the cabins. In the episode, they were kind of budgeting and shopping for their groceries to cook their meals. And one of the families was complaining about the fact that they had to be careful with their money and that they had to budget. And they were talking about how they just normally they would just go to the grocery store and just pick out whatever they needed and not really think about how much it cost. And I'm like, what about this scenario has anything to do with like the 1800s? Like, this is having to budget and having to be really frugal with your money. That is a very normal experience for modern day people. Like, most Americans have to budget. I don't know. It just came across like very like first world problems. And they're like complaining about having to cook and saying that they don't normally cook. I don't know. A lot of it, I was just like, this doesn't seem like you are struggling because this show is supposed to be based in the 1800s. It seems like you're struggling just because you don't know how to do normal adult things. If you like the show, I'm sorry, but that's just my opinion. Unfortunately, after Franklin Graham made his statement, it seemed like every other prominent conservative also felt compelled to share their thoughts on the entire situation. The Gaineses have now been berated by the likes of Matt Walsh, Allie Beth Stuckey, Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro, and everyone's favorite disgraced pastor, Mark Driscoll. Yep, as a commenter recently pointed out, I never miss an opportunity to take a dig at Driscoll when I can.
Alexa, good morning.
I'm Jason Hanna.
My name is Joe Riggs.
We have our twin boys, Ethan and Lucas, that are 10 years old.
Yeah, I didn't need to see their bed.
Oh, Mark, you're really telling on yourself here. The fact that your mind immediately jumped to this couple's intimate life because you saw a shot of their made bed says a lot more about you than it does about them. It's not like they were like cuddling under the covers. They literally were just showing their bedroom. Like, what? You're weird. I'm really not a fan of drawing conclusions about people's sexuality or asserting that anyone who's homophobic is actually closeted, but Mark Driscoll like makes this really hard not to do. Like, if you think saying their bedroom makes you gay, you probably are.
So I'm assuming the Gaines are a little perplexed at the backlash that they deserve. So the way it works is this. If you profess Christ, you need to be loyal to Christ. And if you profess Christ, those who profess Christ, they have a measure of trust that they give you, not because you've earned it, but because they love Christ. And so when you see something like the massive, very wealthy platform that has been built, it is built with a core base audience of people who probably love Christ or at least hold to conservative traditional values that are somewhat based on biblical teaching. And so for the Gaines to deviate from that is to betray their entire core audience.
So, first of all, is Mark admitting that he trusts people simply because they're Christian? He does realize that Christians can do bad things too, right? Trusting someone simply because they belong to your ideological camp and not because they've actually demonstrated that they're trustworthy is like the most childish behavior. Like, I don't automatically trust people when they tell me that they're an atheist or a Satanist. I trust people when they've shown me they can be trusted. Secondly, I do agree with Mark that the Gaines' core audience is or was mostly evangelical Christians. As I said earlier, it's clear who Magnolia and Waco was made for. That being said, their brand extends beyond their conservative Christian base. Fixer Upper appealed to a diverse range of people, and, since 2017, Target has partnered with Joanna on their Hearth and Hand line of home decor. Many Target shoppers might not even realize that Hearth and Hand has anything to do with the Gaines. I myself have even bought a few home decor pieces from that part of the store. According to Celebrity Net Worth, the Gaineses have a combined net worth of $50 million. So they can more than afford to alienate a portion of their fan base. In my opinion, the Gaineses are opportunists. I don't think that they would do something they know would put a significant damper on their money-making schemes. Like, sorry, Mark, but you and your ilk are just not that important to their bottom line.
It's also remarkably tone deaf. We just had an election. I don't know if you guys saw that. It seemed like a resounding national referendum to stop this spread of trying to sexualize children and normalize perverse behavior.
Oh my God, Mark. Like, nobody on the left is trying to sexualize children or promote perverse behavior. Need I remind you that you're the one who had dirty thoughts simply because you saw a gay couple's bed? Merely acknowledging that queer folks exist isn't inherently sexualizing, just like how acknowledging cishet folks exist isn't inherently sexualizing either. If seeing a gay couple stirs up feelings for you, that sounds like something you need to work out for yourself. Also, I'm unsure which election he's referring to here. Given the context, I'm guessing he's referring to how the Southern Baptist Convention recently voted to work on repealing gay marriage. While the Southern Baptist Convention is the largest Protestant group in the United States, it doesn't represent all Americans or even all Christians in America. So it's just simply not the case that there's some national referendum to repeal civil rights for queer folks. Like, of course, whacked out conservative Christians like Driscoll want to repeal gay marriage. Like, we've all known this for a while. Despite their claims to the contrary, we've always known their true motives don't have to do with protecting the children like they claim. It's always been about eliminating an entire subset of the population that they just don't like.
This behavior, all the way up till 1970, in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders, it would have been considered in that day, as well as our own, the Bible on mental health. This behavior was listed as a mental illness during my lifetime. And it has gone from a mental illness to a civil right, and it has gone from those who don't love Christ advocating it to those who do claim to love Christ tolerating it. One generation tolerates a sin, the next generation celebrates that sin, and then the generation after that no longer knows that it's a sin. This is the slippery slope.
Mark, you know that science changes as we learn more about the world, right? Like, surely you're not this stupid. Well, he did dedicate an entire sermon series to talking about how black and white thinking is actually good. So yeah, maybe he just is that stupid. Here he references the DSM, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, but does he know that we're currently on the 5th revision of the DSM? This means that we've revised and updated some of the information in the DSM 5 times already, and it's not only been related to LGBT issues. Are our society's changing attitudes about queer folks exemplifying a slippery slope, or are we just doing better than the generations before us? Like, leave it to Mark Driscoll to call progress a slippery slope.
This is using a platform that was given you by using the name of Christ and by exercising some commitment to traditional values, and this is a betrayal of Christ and your core base. Now, I've heard, I don't know, I don't live on the internet, I play with grandkids, but if you're online defending yourself and shooting people and you're being judgmental and accusing other leaders of criticizing you, well, shame on you. You're the one who farted in your own elevator, so you got to smell it. You have no one to blame but yourself. You did this to yourself. This is the result of people who don't understand that there are not platforms, there are people. And those people are depending on you to be consistent and loyal with your messaging and your loyalty. When you're no longer loyal to their God or them, they have no obligation to be loyal to you. And once you claim Christ, you need to know that when you're saying and doing things that are anti-Christ, it's not just people who are frustrated with you, it's God who opposes you. So my encouragement would be, and we've loved the Gaineses, my wife and I've watched the shows, and Chip seems funny, they're beautiful kids, and they've done some good work in restoring Waco, Texas.
Are Chip and Joanna really doing anything that is anti-Christ? As Texas Representative James Tallarico, who's a Christian, by the way, explained to Joe Rogan a few days ago, Jesus didn't have anything to say about gay people.
Let's take the issue of homosexuality in particular. One is something Jesus never talks about, even though gay people existed in the ancient world.
Is it in the Old Testament?
So there, in the Old Testament, there is a prohibition against men lying with other men.
Right.
And here's the thing, and any biblical scholar will tell you this, in a lot of ways we're dealing with ancient euphemisms. And it's hard to tell what a euphemism means thousands of years later, right? I had a professor at seminary, this is going to sound weird, but he was like, think about 2,000 years from now, how difficult it'll be for people to tell the difference between a butt dial and a booty call, right? Like those are two things that sound very similar on a piece of paper and they have very different meanings. And so
That's funny.
So like in the Hebrew Bible, you do have this prohibition. We're not sure exactly what it means, and if we're taking it just literally, does that mean that we're also we're prohibiting same-sex relationships between women, right? Because that's not prohibited in that particular scripture.
How is it described? So, what is the actual passage?
I mean, that's the one I just gave to you about.
What is the
men.
punishment?
I mean, I think in most of these violations of the law, the punishment, if it's called an abomination, the punishment can sometimes be death. And this is true of eating certain foods, of planting different crops next to each other.
Wearing two different types of cloth.
Sure.
Shout out to James Tallarico for being a real one. Drew and I both love Tallarico, and he's single-handedly giving me faith that the Democrats will finally actually do something about the Christian nationalism that's sweeping the nation. Undisputedly, Jesus spent way more time warning his followers against rich people than anything else. It honestly shocks me that those who claim to take the Bible literally don't think that Trump is the Antichrist, because if there's anyone that's going against everything Jesus preached, it's definitely Donald Trump. Okay, so at the end of the previous clip, Driscoll said that up until recently, both he and his wife were actually fans of Chip and Joanna. I find this interesting, considering that this recent drama isn't the first time that the Gaineses have said that they're not anti-LGBT. Back in 2021, Chip and Joanna responded to allegations that they're both racist and homophobic after they donated to Chip's sister's campaign for a school board position. Chip's sister is a conservative who's against critical race theory and I believe has said things that are pretty homophobic in the past. In an interview for The Hollywood Reporter, Joanna said, "The accusations that get thrown at you, like you're a racist or you don't like people in the LGBTQ community, that's the stuff that really eats my lunch because it's so far from who we really are. That's the stuff that keeps me up." So yeah, if Driscoll is just now realizing that the Gaineses aren't anti-LGBT, that just means he and his wife haven't been paying attention. But again, in my opinion, just because the Gaineses aren't anti-LGBT doesn't mean they're pro-LGBT. Being an ally entails more than just reminding the public every few years that you're not homophobic and casting gay people in your TV shows when it financially benefits you. Being an actual ally means fighting for LGBT people and their rights, even when that costs you. So from here, Driscoll complains about how Baylor, a Christian university located in Waco, is supposedly launching a new DEI initiative. This could be an entire video in itself, but long story short, no, Baylor isn't really involved in DEI. If you'd like to learn more about this, I've included Hemant Mehta's article about it down in the description. Driscoll then ends by reprimanding Chip specifically because in Driscoll's mind, this whole situation is ultimately Chip's fault because he didn't lead his family properly. And, Driscoll never passes up an opportunity to assert his dominance and out-alpha another man. So have Chip and Joanna responded to the outrage? Yeah, they actually have. About a week ago, Chip posted to X and said, "Talk, ask questions, listen, maybe even learn. Too much to ask of modern American Christian culture. Judge first, understand later / never." It's a sad Sunday when non-believers have never been confronted with hate or vitriol until they are introduced to a modern American Christian. Okay, Chip. Jason Hanna and Joe Riggs, the gay couple that was featured on Back to the Frontier, also spoke out and said, representation matters deeply, especially for those who are still finding the courage to live their truth. When families like ours are visible, it opens doors for others to feel safe, loved, and validated. Despite what Driscoll or any of the other triggered conservative influencers believe, I don't think that this drama will ultimately hurt Chip and Joanna. They're gonna keep making money moves with or without the support of evangelicals. If anything, I think this all distracts from the real problem with Back to the Frontier, which is that it's ultimately just another way for the Gaineses to build out their wealth by capitalizing on our desire for highly curated and aesthetically pleasing snippets of American life, both past and present. You guys, real quick before we end the video, don't forget that Womanizer and I have a surprise for you. Just click the link down in the description to receive your surprise, and keep in mind that you could even win a Womanizer next. Thanks so much for watching, and a huge thank you to my patrons who help make these videos possible. If you like this video, please be sure to subscribe and ring the bell. If you'd like to follow me on social media, my Instagram is Taylor_the_antibot. And if you'd like to consider supporting this channel financially, a link to my Patreon will be down in the description, and we'll see you on the next one. Say bye!